Hello everyone, welcome back to another Doctor Who figure review. In today's Doctor Who figure review, I'm taking a look at History of the Daleks set 15, Remembrance of the Daleks. Another edition of Remembrance of the Daleks to add to the collection. This time, the Renegade Daleks are getting a bit of love. This time we've got a Renegade Dalek and the Renegade Supreme Dalek, a highly desirable figure released in 2010 in the Food and Planet 4-pack. And it's finally now been tweaked for the B&M line. So the way this was going to work is we're going to take a look at the packaging, articulation and detail for these figures and do a comparison from their original counterparts. So we've got the 2010 Remembrance of the Dalek set to compare these new B&M versions. So let's take a look at the packaging. The packaging for the History of the Dalek set 15, Remembrance of the Dalek, so we've got the Doctor Who logo there, we've got the sort of purple space background, which is very fitting for the 7th Doctor, very reminiscent of the 7th Doctor title sequence. The name of the set there, History of the Dalek set 15, the 7th Doctor, the scale figures aside, and we have a bio on Remembrance of the Dalek set and behind the scenes info on the Dalek prop, so do feel free to pause if you want to have a little read about the History of the Dalek sets. So here we have our Renegade Dalek, the 3rd release. We'll compare the other two in a minute. So let's take a look at the articulation and then we'll go on to the detail for this Dalek. Articulation wise for these Daleks, so it is your standard Dalek articulation, so the dome can do a full 360 degree turn, the eye stalk can go up and down, but I will say that the eye stalk is incredibly rubbery on both of these Daleks. We have ball jointed plunger and ball jointed gun, and of course the Daleks are on wheels so they can patrol around looking for the hand of Omega. On to detail for the Renegade Dalek. So we have the new improved dome light, what we first saw on the Necros Dalek set in the Revelation of the Dalek set. So we've got a nice sort of ridge detail on them, which is very nice, and this black trim, which really does help accentuate across this sort of grey. And then we have a new Dalek eye stalk, which is a welcome addition, because I don't think character have got the Renegade Dalek eye stalks right. And third time's a charm, and I think they've nailed it with this one. We've got the lovely silver rings there, which have been given this nice sort of reflective silver look, which is the same effect that they've given the actual sort of base for the eye stalk, sort of the sort of silver circle, which is the first time they've done it on a Renegade Dalek, which is very accurate. But I do think the iris should be ever so slightly bigger, because the irises are quite chunky in Remembrance of the Daleks, and this has got a lovely nice sort of sense of depth with there. We've got this nice sort of lovely ellipsis there, but yeah, it does look like it's just come out of the screen really when you get it at certain angles. So yeah, moving down we have the traditional Dalek neckbin section detailing with the mesh, which again very nice standard Dalek detailing. Then we move on to the slat, which I think is the same slat sculpt as the Toys R Us Renegade Dalek. So we've got this sort of mesh detailing, which I think maybe should be a little bit of a darker silver, because I think it does pop on against this sort of matte black finish of the slats, and I think that's a really gorgeous thing about this Dalek, is this lovely matte black finish to it, which is great. I think the slat sculpt is wrong. I think it should have a different slat sculpt, or heck, even give these Daleks a new slat sculpt, because if they're willing to give these sort of new eye stalks and dome lights and sort of gun box section, then maybe they could have done a new sort of slat section for this. But I guess because it's the last classic run, classic Dalek set, how much could they reuse it? Probably a lot, but you know, it's one of those things. But yeah, talking of the gun box section, we've got the extended oval, again much like the same from the Necros Dalek set. We've got the traditional Dalek plunger detailing, and we have the unpinched Dalek gun detailing. And if we move down to the skirt section, we've got a lovely matte black finish to the hemispheres, which is just very striking. And we have the two tone fender there, which again very nice. I think that obviously Remembrance, the skirt section should be a little bit different, but I do think that the Shorecraft Dalek was around. I think two of them were on Remembrance of the Daleks, but I think for the majority they had the more higher up skirt section, hence why they sort of wobbled around on the cobbles. But yeah, let's do a little comparison to the other Renegade Daleks. Comparison time, so this is the Renegade Dalek from the 4-pack from 2010. the Renegade Dalek from the Toys R Us set. So this is where we really get to see the colour difference in the grey, and I think that this should be a little bit darker, just a little touch. I think in certain lights it doesn't look so bad, but it's when you compare it next to the other two Renegade Daleks is when you notice, gosh, that's quite a light grey. It's almost very Destiny of the Daleks like, isn't it, this sort of grey compared to these two, because this doesn't really have sort of a bluish hue to it. It sort of more belongs in sort of Curse of Fatal Death, doesn't it? So let's compare. So naturally you can see the eye stalk difference. So this has got the smallest eye stalk around. Sorry, Mr. Dalek. And then we have this eye stalk, which I think gets right in terms of the bigger iris. And I think that this has more of the accurate sort of silver finish to it, which I think is a lot more of an improvement. So this has the sort of 2011 Dalek dome light sculpt. This has the 2023 dome light section. You can see that it uses exactly the same sort of mesh sculpt there, and we do have the accurate, more sort of extended oval, and we have the actual ball jointed painted black this time, and we have the sort of singular fender Dalek bumper on this one, and you can really see sort of the difference there with the sort of glossy black hemispheres against the more accurate matte black finish, and you can see sort of the eye stalk side by side, how this just looks way more accurate on the new Dalek. Yeah, so that is just a little bit of difference, and of course the midsection here, this is using the Imperial Dalek sculpt, so it doesn't have the nice sort of mesh grating effect to it, which is a little bit of a shame. But yeah, you can see the differences of the sort of evolution of the Renegade Dalek. Now I think that this should be just ever so slightly darker, and I think you would have a pretty much spot on Renegade Dalek. But again, the lighting really does vary in Remembrance of a Dalek, so that is a comparison from the Renegade Dalek. So let's take a look at the Supreme. On to the Supreme Dalek, a highly desirable figure back in the line and readily available. Yeah, this Supreme Dalek I'm incredibly nostalgic for, because it was the first classic Dalek I owned. I had the Product Enterprise 12-inch remote control Dalek, so I've got a lot of nostalgia for this Dalek, and I love it. I think that this is a great update of the Forbidden Planet one. We'll look at that in a minute, and I feel like I need white gloves to sort of touch this Dalek, because it's so glossy, and I feel like it's sort of fingerprint central otherwise. So if you own sort of the Dark Trooper from the Star Wars Black Series line, you'll know what I mean by that, because this has got a lovely glossy black finish to it. So let's take a look at the details. So of course we have the Necros Dalek dome lights, but now in this translucent orange, which really does stand against the sort of glossy black finish. But I will say, instead of giving these dome lights a black trim, they should have, I think, a white trim, white or silver. But yeah, I think that would have been a lot better. The eye stalk has the same eye stalk as the Renegade Dalek, but the rings are now painted white, which I think is accurate. I think it really does vary. Sometimes it looks a bit white, then it looks sort of silver, but I think white is the correct colour scheme for the rings. Again, I think this suffers the same issue as the Renegade Dalek, but the pupil should be ever so slightly bigger, but still looks very stunning, and it does have a very striking shelf presence. So we've got the traditional Dalek slat detail, sort of with the sort of mesh and the rivets and the bolts. I think it's the same sculpt that was introduced last year. It's not the original Dalek slat section, sort of sculpt, I should say, from 2008. So this is the 2022 classic Dalek slat sculpt, so it's very much the same detailing like we all know and love. And of course we have the correct gun this time. Instead of the Genesis gun, we have the unpinched gun, which is very accurate. And of course we have the new oval section, which again is a lot more accurate than the sort of 70s sculpt. And of course we have this lovely sort of ball joint bin in a much more darker grey silver plastic, and we have the traditional Dalek plunger detailing, and then we have of course the lovely glossy black finish, like I say, fingerprint central. So yeah, I do feel like I need gloves holding this Dalek, because it is absolutely resplendent, and the lovely, vibrant, shiny silver we've seen ever since History of a Dalek set line began back in 2020 with the hemispheres and the midsection. It really does pop, and it just looks like it's sort of trundled off the screen. So let's compare this Supreme Dalek to the Forbidden Planet version. Comparison time. So this is the 2010 Supreme Dalek, and this is the new shiny B&M version. So let's take a closer look at these Daleks. So straight off the bat, you'll notice that the how glossy this new B&M version is compared to the FP one. But this is glossy, but this is glossy. Very shiny. It's a shiny Dalek. You know, you can see your reflection on it practically. But yeah, you can see that the one thing the FP version does get is sort of the bigger eye stalk, the bigger sort of iris pupil, which I think they haven't painted that well. Yeah, quality control is a bit of a nightmare. As you can see, the neck bin section's not very aligned. We have the new improved dome lights. This has the original Dalek dome light sculpt, whereas this has the new Necros sculpt, and you can see the improvement there, and you can see the difference in the sort of eye stalk length there, but this is more of an accurate length, whereas that's probably a little bit too big. And of course we have the original Dalek slat sculpt compared to the 2022 version, and we have the original Dalek oval, and this has the extended Dalek oval. And then of course the ball joints are in this sort of moulded in a grey plastic here, whereas this is moulded in a silver, and I think that just works ever so slightly better. And we have very much the same sort of detailing on the bottom. But yeah, those are the differences between the original Supreme Dalek and the new updated version. Thoughts on the History of the Daleks set 15, Remembrance of the Daleks. Well, I think that this set is a lot better in person. I think the Renegade Dalek surprised me, because when I first saw the photos, I was like, that's not a Renegade Dalek, that's way too light. I think the promotional images probably make it look a little bit too light. I think in person it is ever so slightly darker, and I think that the figure overall should be a slightly darker grey, but I think that you definitely get to see what it's going for. But yeah, the Supreme Dalek, I think it's great to finally see that get retweaked, and I think that it's vastly improved over the original version. I think that this is the definitive Remembrance of a Daleks Supreme Dalek. I think that it's absolutely glorious, and yeah, I think that this is what the History of a Dalek set line should be, retweaking the existing figures and making them as accurate as they possibly can within the B&M budget. And I think that this is a great addition. It's taken me by surprise, because I didn't think I'd like it as much as I do. I think that this is one of the surprising sets where it's a bit of an underdog, and I think that it's really come out on top for me. I really like it. Maybe because it's the childhood nostalgia of Supreme Dalek. I don't know why, but I love that Supreme Dalek an awful lot. It's a Dalek figure I'm not going to want to sort of mess around with too much, because like I say, it's fingerprint central. So yeah, it's one of those ones where it's like, you're pretty, but I'm not gonna mess around with you. But yeah, great set. Highly recommend it if you can find it, because I think that this is a nice one to go alongside your Cold Hill School set from 2020. I'm sure we'll get the Imperial Daleks back in the line in some form. But yeah, it's great to see the Renegade Daleks get a bit of love. So yes, that's been my review on the History of the Daleks set 15. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time for more Doctor Who figure related shenanigans. So please do like and subscribe,